On January 27th, the Auschwitz concentration camp was liberated by the Soviet Army. In remembrance of this pivotal moment in history, the United Nations designated January 27th as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This day honors the millions of lives lost and the enduring impact of the Holocaust, reminding us of the importance of combating hatred and upholding human dignity. Sadly, as time has progressed and there are fewer and fewer survivors left to tell their stories, Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism have increased dramatically. And in the age of social media, anti-Semitic narratives have become prevalent on various platforms, with people viewing them in their own personal echo chambers. Belle Jarniewski is the executive director of the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada and serves on Canada's federally appointed delegation to the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. She has made it her life's work to educate and inform the public about anti-Semitism and the Holocaust and what we can learn from those events so they do not ever happen again. And joining me here over Zoom, I am joined by Belle Jarniewski. Hey, Belle, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Mhm. Uh, I first want to start out by asking about you. From what I understand, you have an education degree with a minor in Judaic studies, and your parents were both Holocaust survivors. Is this what made you choose Holocaust education as your primary focus?
Oh, definitely. Growing up as a child of two survivors and, being very much aware that the reason that our family was different from others who went to school with me and that I had no other family other than my parents and my late brother, it was really very much part of my identity. And so as I had these wonderful opportunities come my way, it was very important for me to educate others.
Mm-hmm. So I want to firstly talk about your presentation that you're giving at the Music and Mavens concert and lecture series. It's called Antisemitism, What's in a Word? When I was interviewing the producer for Music and Mavens, Carla Burbreyer, Carla made the point that anti-Semitism is on the rise, and it's been felt by those who work at the Asper campus, the Rady Center, which includes yourself. Can you talk about how Carla approached you and what she had in mind when she wanted you to talk?
Well, Carla is aware of the education that I do on anti-Semitism and my involvement with the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, on the committee that elaborated the definition on anti-Semitism that our federal government embraced in 2019, and 2 years later, the provincial government. And recently, we published a Canadian handbook to the definition, which really puts the definition into a Canadian context. And so Carla and I discussed presenting this at Music and Mavens and talking a little bit about, of course, what has been happening with anti-Semitism and how this handbook can better help people to understand what anti-Semitism is and perhaps sometimes what it isn't.
Aside from the obvious topic of anti-Semitism in the lecture, can you talk about some of the more specific topics that you hope to cover in the lecture?
Well, I'll be really going, explaining, first of all, what the IHRA is, because I think a lot of people, unfortunately, in Canada have never heard of this very important intergovernmental organization. It's not a Jewish organization. At the moment, made up of 35 member countries. There are a number of liaison countries that are not full members yet, and there are 7 permanent partners that include, for instance, UNESCO and many others. And the work that we do and how this definition came about and why it's important. It's a legally non-binding definition, but why it is such an important tool, and then giving examples of things that have been happening recently and how they fit into that definition. And of course, talking about this last year and this exponential, really shocking rise in anti-Semitism that we've seen in Canada.
Mhm, mhm. Um, without giving too much away, can you talk about some of the more specific topics that you hope to cover in the lecture? Is there a silver bullet to fighting anti-Semitism as you see it, or is it a combination of things? And can you talk, if it is a combination of things, can you talk about what those are?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. Certainly, we know that educating on the Holocaust alone is not enough to prevent anti-Semitism, but perhaps how we educate on the Holocaust, in addition to it, I think education is really the only hope. So when we talk about Holocaust education, and of course, we're very fortunate after 50 years of asking for a mandated curriculum to have received the approval from the current provincial government. And very sadly, of course, the Minister of Education has just passed away in the last few days. And
Mhm.
it was so wonderful to meet with him and to see his understanding of that importance and openness. So when we teach about Holocaust education, we also have to teach students about who Jews are. You know, there is this mistaken idea that Jews are all white. When in fact, in Israel, for instance, the majority of Jews in Israel are not. They come from the Middle East, they come from the North African countries, etc. And with this description of Jews being white is a false idea that we enjoy some type of privilege, white privilege, and that we couldn't possibly understand what racism is. But of course, anti-Semitism is a very different kind of racism because most racism just sort of attempts to sort of bring people down and talk about all the negative things. Whereas with anti-Semitism, there are all these conspiracy theories that Jews are actually so powerful and control all the banks and the media, you name it. Clearly, we're doing a really bad job because we certainly are not powerful. But so it is really important to understand that. It's also really important to teach kids about the more than 2,000 year history of anti-Semitism that really began in antiquity, even before the birth of Christianity. So there's that. But also, when we talk about education, I think very unfortunately, today, as opposed to when I went to school, you can easily go through high school and
Mhm.
never learn anything about world history. It is not a required course. And so, unfortunately, many young people, but also many adults, younger adults, um, they get their understanding of what has happened in the world, past history and current, from social media, which is a tremendous source of disinformation and misinformation and hate as well.
Uh, what are you hoping people are going to take away from the Music and Mavens lecture on the 21st? Like, what do you want them to walk away with?
I will hope that they understand more about why it is important to have a definition and what that definition can help us with. I want them, for those who aren't aware, to understand really about this really shocking increase in anti-Semitism right here and what that looks like and what it means for Jews throughout Canada and, of course, in Winnipeg as well. And also about the importance of education.
Absolutely. This has just been great. Thank you so much.